Hello everyone, and this is my review for WWE SummerSlam 2014, and for the most part I'll go off and say I felt this, the SummerSlam was actually a very solid show. Matches were entertaining, some more in the terms of storytelling than in just, overall match quality, but overall a very solid show. Let's go ahead and start with Miz and Dolph Ziggler. Good way of opening up the show. Two guys who can put on a very solid match, which is what they did here. And it was interesting that they decided to put Dolph Ziggler over in this case. I feel like this feud could potentially just be getting started. It's interesting to see them put the babyface over, especially since they haven't had much of a feud outside of it just kind of starting. You kind of like pretty much all they have for that right now is the two of them grew up in the same area and they kind of live two different lifestyles, and that's pretty much all they have for the time being. So hopefully they'll continue on with this feud. It's not just kind of a one-off just to get Dolph Ziggler the Intercontinental title. Though it is nice to see that they are beginning to put over Dolph Ziggler. In these cases, the crowd's been really behind him recently, and it's good to see that they're kind of listening to that and putting him over in this case. So we're hopefully seeing more in the future with the two of them. This brings off to the next match, which was Paige and AJ Lee, and I like where they've been going with this storyline with Paige and AJ. It just again another weird one where you figured that they would put AJ over in this case. It wasn't because Paige had been getting more of the psychological battle and everything going into the actual pay-per-view match itself. So you figured, this is a spot for, AJ to continue going over, but they decided to put Paige over in this case. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I like the development of Paige's character over the last couple weeks, and I feel like they've been doing a lot more with her since they've kind of turned her, not really kind of, but turned her heel and going up against AJ. So again, hopefully this is not like a blow off to it, especially how they ended the match. With Paige being getting really close, and how they just ended the match with Paige and AJ Lee. I feel that this feud is not over with, and we'll see more into the future. So hopefully that's the case. And now this brings me to the two matches I personally felt were questionable, and not questionable in the terms of match quality, but in the terms of the stipulations that were chosen, which was the Rusev and Swagger match, which was the flag match, and the Dean Ambrose Seth Rollins match, which was the lumberjack match. Two match types I don't really like at all, especially the more recent types of flag match rules, but I'm glad they went with the old flag, like a more older flag match rules, which was more of the winner just gets their flag raised and the national anthem played. And in this case, of doing that type of match versus like a flag on a pole match or anything like that, it allowed for a good quality match, and there was the stipulation after the match itself. So I'm glad they went with that, because these two put on again another solid match. You almost figured this would be the time to put Swagger over in this case, but they did. They decided not to go there and putting over Rusev again. But they left it to where the conflict is probably not over between the two. You didn't really get the blow off between the two of them. In this case, the blow off would be more or less just Rusev standing tall and then going on to his next opponent. But no, he decided to attack Zeb Coulter after the match. So I'm expecting to see more between the two of them coming up in the future. In a way, I'm kind of glad that they decided to put over Rusev in this and not blow off the feud, because it might have killed any momentum he had been going with, and there had been talks about just kind of doing away with that character based on the more controversial things that have been going on in actual real world in this. But no, they're sticking that this is just entertainment, and they're just putting him over in this case. They're actually wanting to keep him over going into the future, and we'll see where they go along with that. I don't feel like the Swagger and Rusev storylines are is over with yet. And this brings into the Dean Ambrose Seth Rollins match, which was the lumberjack match. Again, another match type I do not like watching because it kind of, it's the typical deal, and usually it's the typical deal with a lumberjack match is they're not really long, they're not really entertaining, or you have too much focus around the outside of the ring people versus the actual two people inside the ring there. You have that big focus with having the lumberjacks outside the ring versus having that big focus with the two people that are feuding at that time, which in this case they didn't really do that. You didn't get too terribly much in there. You got a lot of focus with Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose going up against each other. You had the typical spots, someone gets thrown out of the ring, they get thrown back in, the face gets thrown out of the ring, he gets beaten up by the heels, and then you had a few other areas, and of course you did have the typical ending of the the big brawl between all the lumberjacks, but you had a lot of time and storytelling between Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose, and then you had Kane involved in there for purposes of trying to protect Seth Rollins and Mr. Money in the Bank and everything. So it made this match a lot more entertaining than what I've typically ever really seen from other lumberjack matches. So that was one of the better things, at least in my own personal opinion. So overall, ended up being a really good match ended up being a really good match, and a lot better than I expected it to be. Just because they did put a lot more time focusing on Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose in the match. And that brings off to the Bray Wyatt and Chris Jericho match. Nothing more to say here other than, the feud between the two of them isn't over with yet. And it was definitely time for Bray Wyatt to fully go over here. And it was good that they had it with him, going over cleanly, just beating Chris Jericho. You didn't have any of the outside interference or anything like that. They needed to put Bray Wyatt over in that way, having him win without interference, no one at ringside, and it was just a fun and entertaining match. I've been really liking the Bray Wyatt character and what and with his promos and how he tells a story inside the ring and outside the ring on the microphone. He's been doing a really good job recently, and not just recently, but pretty much since he's come into the main roster as well. So it was really good to see that they decided to put Bray Wyatt over in this case. I expect them to have another match, which will hopefully be the blow-off match at some point, whether it be before the Night of Champions pay-per-view or at the Night of Champions pay-per-view itself. So we'll see where they decide to go with that one here in the near future. And this brings to the Brie Bella and Stephanie McMahon match, which, honestly, it wasn't a bad match. It really wasn't. It was entertaining. You got the crowd behind it, and you had what many people were expecting towards the end there, which was the Nikki Bella heel turn, which honestly was done pretty well. It was really funny to see Triple H take the bump from Brie Bella right at the end of the match itself. But overall, just fun, entertaining old style type of almost like a women's catfight type deal. I felt it was a very good and entertaining match there. The two of them going off with their husbands' moves as the finishers and everything, I felt was a good way. It's a nice little added touch to it there, and I think that actually got the crowd even more behind that match. Just throughout the entire thing. So they did a really good job there, and they put on a really good match. This brings me to the Randy Orton and Roman Reigns match. This one felt more like just a typical, your typical good match. I'm not really behind the storyline of this, and it was good that they decided to put Roman Reigns over here against Randy Orton, but it just felt like that. It just felt like it was a match that really wasn't. You weren't really invested into the match. I wasn't really invested into seeing the winner or loser of that match. It was kind of just one of those matches. It's like, okay, this is why they're fighting, and it was a good match. Okay, so overall, fun, entertaining match again to watch, which was pretty much all the matches throughout the night, and throughout the entire show. But it was just, it didn't go into a level of any kind of storytelling. So hopefully a feud between them is going to build a little bit more and a little bit more throughout the coming months, and we'll see some more matches with them that people will get more invested into the actual feud itself. And so we'll see where they go with that. I don't feel like most of the other matches, I don't feel like they blew off anything, maybe outside with the main event. And I'll talk about that one here next. But they didn't really blow off any of the storylines, and if anything, they kind of just created new ones to go along with it, going down the road. So we'll see where they go with Roman Reigns and Randy Orton. I don't think this is just a one-off deal between the two of them. I think we'll be seeing more matches between the two of them, and hopefully a continuance of a better feud, because there really wasn't. I didn't feel like there was that much of a build-up going into that match than some of the other matches itself. So this does bring to the main event of the night, which was the Brock Lesnar John Cena match. And this one's a little bit weird to actually say, because I felt the match was good and it was done right. I liked the psychology to the match. I liked how they decided to put Brock Lesnar over in such a dominant way that, it was basically just a squash match between him and John Cena. It felt right. This is a good way of building this is a good way of, continuing that building of showing how dominant Brock Lesnar is. And the reactions that he did during the match were great. I liked the Undertaker sit-up towards the middle or towards the end of the match itself. That was what I liked about the match. It came off really good. My biggest problem with the match, though, and this does knock it a little bit, is how many times he just had to do the German suplex. Honestly, and it wasn't just the aspect of him doing like tons of different suplexes and dominating over John Cena, but it was pretty much punch, punch, knee, knee, and then he does like 15 German suplexes. It honestly started to get boring. And that was just on my own end. Like 10-12 minutes into the match, I felt like it was a good match. Go ahead, end it now. But then there was another good 5 to 10 minutes of him continually doing it over and over and over again. And it started just feeling like the match was dragging on. It was getting boring. Honestly, during that match, I actually started focusing on other things and just listening to the match in the background, because it really was starting to get boring. And it was a very minute amount of people at the Staples Center, but you did start hearing a few boring chants in the crowd as well. And like I said, maybe I would have found it a little bit more exciting if he was doing different variations of his suplexes and everything, because I know from the past that Brock knows many different ways of suplexing somebody. But overall, outside of the potential of it being boring to some people, I felt psychology-wise, showing how dominant the character was, honestly the brutality of how he did the German suplex was really good, and the match itself came off really well. I actually liked the aspect that he just squashed John Cena out there. Because they want to put Brock Lesnar over as such a dominant guy that nobody can beat him. And that's the perfect way to do it, right there. They did that. I just felt the match dragged on a little too long. And that's my own personal opinion about that. So overall, I felt the SummerSlam show was a very solid show. Great matches to watch. You got my opinion about the main event in there as well, and how I felt about that. It was a good way of building the character, but potentially gets boring towards the end of it. So overall good show, and we'll see where they continue on with this. I don't feel, outside of John Cena and Brock Lesnar, which you can't have a rematch after something like that in any way, at least not right away. You know, maybe down the road in like 4 or 5 months, maybe like a Royal Rumble pay-per-view, there's another chance for a match there, but not like next month at Night of Champions or anything like that. But pretty much all those feuds, I feel like they can continue on going. They didn't really blow anything off at the pay-per-view, and we'll see where they go on with this with Monday Night Raw and see where they go with the future, but overall, just a very solid show. So that was my SummerSlam review, and I thank you guys for watching.